Welcome to ASUN Gameday, the official podcast of ASUN Sports. I am Jordan Griffitt, my co-host William Hall, and Mike DeVader. I am the Assistant Director of Digital Strategies and Broadcast Communications here at the ASUN. Guys, quick introduction of yourselves here for the podcast.
William Hall, Director of Communications, excited about this podcast, and let's get going.
And I'm Mike DeVader, the Assistant Director of Communications, and I'm excited to be here, ready to get this thing rolling as well.
Well, we have our inaugural ASUN football season coming up, and this is the inaugural podcast here for ASUN Sports. We're going to talk about football mainly, as well as many other sports. We have a little segment that William's going to catch us up on in the second half of this podcast of all of the other sports going around, but this is mostly about football, ASUN Game Day. So excited to get this season going. So a quick breakdown of what this podcast is going to look like week in and week out. Shortly, we will dive into what we call the ASUN analysis. That's what we're going to look at the previous week. We don't really have a previous week, so we're going to look at last year for this podcast for a few minutes. Then we'll move on to our introduction for the player of the week, talk about their performances and what we saw from them the previous week as well. And then we go to Mike introduces his standout stat, and that's where he's going to pick a non-obvious stat that went on in ASUN football, and we're going to try and work our way around it and see exactly why it's important and what that can entail for future weeks here in the conference. And then after that, we will move into the ASUN Game of the Week. We will pick a game of the week as well as our constituents here in the conference office. And then we will go into exactly why that game is important throughout the week. There's going to be a lot of good games this year. After that, we're going to go into what's called the game within the game. And that's where we are going to pick a certain matchup or a certain aspect of the game that we're going to find important. Really, that's going to be anything. An example is going to be coaches versus coaches, and that's what mine's going to be so far this week. I don't want to give you too much about it up until we get there, but that is exactly what the game within the game is going to be. And then we have our ASUN preview, and that's when William Hall is going to introduce all of the other sports and all the other news around the conference. And after that, we move into our trivia, and that will be the final segment in this podcast. And these guys are going to try and guess. It's just going to be a normal quiz, just like we were back in school. Multiple choice, you get 4 answers here. I give you guys a question, and you try and get it right. We did a test podcast earlier, and I fooled both of you, so I'm feeling good about it so far. So
it was a trick question.
Those are going to be interesting.
Yeah. It was, xenophobia. What's the meaning for xenophobia? And it ended up being dogs. You guys guessed kangaroos. Threw that in there. And hey, I'm undefeated, but it didn't count, right?
It didn't count.
Right.
Preseason podcast. So.
Preseason. Yes. Exhibition podcast, simply. That's all it was.
Yeah. So.
All right, we will get into our ASUN analysis. This is ASUN Game Day, the first official podcast for ASUN Sports. Guys, it was a great year for the ASUN last year, but it was a little different than what we look like in the inaugural year this year. We had 3 teams last year with Jacksonville State, Central Arkansas, and Eastern Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky ended up at the top, was undefeated within the conference. You had the WAC Challenge as well. Guys, this is a team coming into this year. They have a lot of returners and a team that can look dangerous coming into the 22 year.
Yeah, EKU, strong defense last year. They had a good showing first year in the league. They're coming into this season, picked number 2 in our preseason poll. I think possibly they had a chance to make the playoffs last year. I think they were a close team that missed out on it. So I'm expecting big things from the Colonels this year.
Yeah, and I think they could really surprise some people as well coming into this next year coming up here soon. I think a lot of our teams have really good offenses, so I want to see if they can keep pace with everybody coming in with our full 6 that we have, and really excited to see what Eastern Kentucky has to offer this year.
And again, they didn't get the AQ last year. That was given to Stephen F. Austin. And Stephen F. Austin is playing week 0 against Jacksonville State. We will certainly talk about that. But, guys, just overall, looking at this conference now, 6 teams in it. You've added teams like Kennesaw State, UNA, Austin Peay now in there. What do we expect to see with a brand-new conference this year?
I'm excited about the full 16 in the ASUN, bringing the rivalries that existed outside of ASUN football into the ASUN. I think that's going to be a great thing, and also building these new rivalries within the conference. We had 4 teams. 4 of our teams are inside the top 17 in the FCS for wins over the past 5 seasons. That's Austin Peay, Central Arkansas, Jacksonville State, and Kennesaw State. So we got a lot of teams that have been very successful recently. So seeing them go at it inside the conference is going to be exciting.
Well, and I was going to kind of piggyback off that as well, because when I was at ASUN Media Day talking to the coaches, that was one thing they were definitely excited about, was the not necessarily bad blood, but the familiarity on the field that they're going to have with some of these teams that they really kind of miss. The coaches admitted that they really wish that they were playing some of these schools, and here we go. We got these teams back together again. It should be really fun to see those reignite.
Well, to both of your points, I think something that's interesting about this is just the feel of it. You had 3 teams last year, and you did have the WAC Challenge, and it was in AQ7. You had the automatic qualifier, but it just didn't feel like it does this year. And I know you still have you still have to match up with the WAC to make sure that you can still get your automatic qualifier. But having 6 teams in the inaugural season, it just feels a little bit more, like you said, you get these rivalries, you get a little more, I would say, in depth. You have a full 6-team slate. I mean, that's exciting. It's a full-fledged conference now, and again, you build those rivalries now.
And there's a trophy.
There's a trophy.
I mean, that changes everything.
Right.
You're playing for a
Need
trophy.
a trophy.
This year. Yeah. So
we don't give out participation trophies here at the ASUN.
No,
it's all about the winners.
We're working for it. We're working
exactly.
for it this year.
And Mike, you mentioned Media Day. The one thing I think we all learned from Media Day, talking to all the coaches, is that they don't like it, but it's the first sign that the season's about to start, because you have Media Day. Next thing you know, you get all the students back on campus. Fall camp starts, and just like that, like we're recording this a few days before kickoff. You're just right there before the start of the season.
I mean, I completely agree with you, and I was sitting with those coaches, with those players, and I could see that, of course, they understand that they have to do Media Day just to get it done. But you could tell, talking to them right after their interviews, let's play a game, boys. I mean, you could see the coaches were fired up. The players were, where's my practice gear? Let's get going, because that was the final hurdle that they needed to see to get ready for camp, to get that first game on the schedule, and to really start to hit somebody for real.
And coming up this week, week 0, Jacksonville State and Austin Peay are in action. So excited to watch ASUN football. Again, a full ASUN football conference this year. Jacksonville State, they have a tough task ahead of them. A 2:30 p.m. kickoff, August 27th. That is today when this podcast is being released, against Stephen F. Austin, the number 10 ranked team in the nation at the FCS polls. Guys, what is it going to be for Jacksonville State in this game? What do they need to do to get a win?
I think they've got to come out strong. They're getting a matchup against a top-ranked team.
Beat them last year.
It's a big test. It's a big test, but JSU started off strong last year. So I think that they're going to build off of that. You know, they've got a new coach, but I think they're looking to take that next step. So I'm looking for them to come out of the gate strong against Stephen F. Austin and make a statement in his first game.
Well, I think it's an old-school mentality with Coach Rodriguez coming in. I believe it all starts in the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. I mean, last year Jacksonville State averaged 22 points a game. So if you can try to solidify the offense and defensive lines, that could really change that. Obviously, scoring touchdowns when you have those opportunities helps. But if you can't control the line of scrimmage, you're not going to win very many games. So I think that's something that they're going to try to do, create some excitement, move forward with that, because if you can control the offense and defensive line, that's off to a good start.
Now, we just mentioned the WAC talking about being able to get that automatic qualifier. Jacksonville State, if they're able to take care of business and beat Stephen F. Austin, they're the front runners in the WAC to win that division, or that conference rather. That's a big help, not only for Jacksonville State if they want to compete for the AQ, but for the rest of the conference. If you're able to get that win, boy, that is a big help to the entire ASUN.
Exactly. I mean, I think that week 0, you get that chance to jump on things, but you also get the opportunity to set the tone. And JSU, you know, I'm fully confident they can be a tone setter and get that win, put us ahead in looking at who's going to get that AQ between the ASUN and the WAC, and just, again, put us off on the right foot.
And you're looking at Stephen F. Austin, Trey Self, the quarterback for the Lumberjacks, one of the best quarterbacks in the FCS. And that's exactly to your point, Mike, talking about the trenches. They're going to have to make him uncomfortable, and also to William's point, and early. Because if you can get him off the same, if you can get him uncomfortable early in that game, I think that changes everything. And when a week 1 game happens, you come out and you smack somebody in the mouth, there you go. You set the tone, and everything changes from then. After that, the rankings don't matter.
Yeah, and I think it all comes down to you've been practicing, you've been preparing for this game, but when the game is actually playing against somebody else, you never know how anybody's going to react. It's a whole new season. Somebody could get rattled that you didn't even expect. So if they're able to do that, put their best foot forward, that's going to create confidence. And a team with confidence is pretty scary. So I don't think it really matters what happened last year. The coaches are going to tell you that anyway, that we got a whole new team, we got a whole new preparation process. But if they can really create that pressure, that's going to be a key factor for both these games is the defensive backs trying to cover the passing games. But the line of scrimmage can really affect all of that.
And moving on to the team I'm most excited to see this year in the ASUN, that is Austin Peay. In week 0, they will actually have the first game. Although JSU has the so-called FCS kickoff, Austin Peay plays Western Kentucky at 11 a.m. So make sure you set your alarm clocks, get up early, and watch Austin Peay ball out, because this is a team that I think a lot of people are sleeping on. Scored 32, almost 33 points per game last year. And, guys, they have wins over Chattanooga. They were ranked number 18, first game of the season. They played Ole Miss. You always gain experience from that. A one-possession loss to EKU, beat the brakes off Murray State. A 1-point loss to UT Martin. They were a team that got to the FCS playoff and I think won a game or two. And they ended up with a positive record, 6-5 on the year. Man, this is a team that I think a lot of people aren't giving enough credit coming into the year, and they face a prolific passing offense in Western Kentucky.
Yeah, this is a big game from Austin Peay, an old rival that they have playing against Western Kentucky. This win would give them their first win against the Hilltoppers since 1996. That's
big.
Yeah, that's big. So they're going in looking to break the trend against Western Kentucky and go in a different direction. And this is, 43rd meeting, so obviously there's a lot of bad blood, but it's kind of older, so new team, a new look on things and trying to make things change. I mean, Austin Peay went 6-5 last year. As you went through some of their wins, a lot of those games were close that they could have also turned into wins. So I think they're looking to increase that win total, obviously, here in the ASUN.
Well, and I think knowing that date that they haven't beat Western Kentucky by is a motivating factor, and being able to talk to Coach Walden, if anybody's able to motivate, it's definitely him, because, I mean, we work for the ASUN, and he had us ready to play. So
yeah,
I can only imagine what he's going to bring to the table to get everybody excited, get everybody prepared for that game. And, familiarity makes things hard, but I think a new team could make things even scarier, because a lot of these schools are familiar with them, maybe watch them play. But if Austin Peay comes in and has a good performance against Western Kentucky, that could not only help their confidence and help the ASUN as a brand, but it could make other teams really take a second look, try to find out what Austin Peay is really bringing to the table, which is exciting for everybody.
And if you haven't, I recommend you going back. I'm sure it's out there somewhere, and watching Walden's media day. I would say it was his first press conference when he got up there. They go by, each team has their own motto, right? At Austin Peay, it's fearless, fast, and physical. That man is fearless, fast, and physical. I mean, that's just he's exactly what he preaches. And after he got off that stage, I went and shook his head and said, "Hey, I'd play for you, Coach." So Scotty Walden has a big task ahead. Wants to get this Austin Peay team on the map, and I really think he's going to do so. Week 1, Western Kentucky, Jacksonville State playing SFA. Okay. Didn't hint it earlier. I wanted to get the true fans to stick around for the podcast. We have a special guest joining us. Commissioner Ted Gumbart joins the podcast here on ASUN Game Day. Joining the podcast, Commissioner Ted Gumbart. Commissioner, I appreciate you joining the podcast. The league going from 3 to 6 teams. You weren't at media day. How excited are you for this league to get started?
I just texted a friend of mine who said, good luck this fall. And I said, man, I am through with the planning and the work, and I just want to go to the game and see the ASUN logo on the field. That's going to just feel really good. And, we start at football season's here, so it is exciting. And we're going to have an ASUN champ. And there's been a lot of work that's gone into it. And, I'm ready to just see the logo on the field and watch them play.
Yeah, that's going to be exciting. The logo on the field, I didn't think about that part
that's
of
true.
it.
That adds to it.
That's a key. That's a key. That's a win.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to Kennesaw and you've been to games like I have and watched from the stands or watched from the president's suite, it's still somebody else's logo on the field. And that, I was like, we got to fix that.
Yes.
And, for them, that's where they were playing. And it was a good deal. But just that's one of those things like, yeah, we got that. We got that done.
And something else that adds to it when you have 6 teams now, it adds those rivalries. Now you had a few last year as well, but now you add Kennesaw State, UNA, and Austin Peay. It feels like a full conference now, and now you can really sink your teeth into your opponents as well.
Yeah, and they're going to, the student athletes are into that as much as the coaches, the fans, and anybody else. They want to prove they're the best in the ASUN. And they're all wearing that inaugural season patch, which is really cool because there's only one time. That's it. And then after that, we're ASUN football. Yeah. But that's really cool too, and they're into it. And I hope the fans get into it. And you look at where we are in the Southeast. People have said, "Well, you're kind of like a mini SEC." And I take that as a compliment. I think anything that's related to SEC football, we would be very well served to be compared to them. But, we got a team in Arkansas. We got a team in Kentucky. We got a team in Tennessee. We got a team in Georgia. We got a team in Alabama. Yeah. And those are some good places to play football. So it is. I'm pumped up.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of football in Alabama, we've got the kickoff week 0 in Montgomery with Jacksonville State. Going into that game, what are your thoughts on that? What do you expect to see from the Gamecocks?
I am not a prognosticator, and then when I sit and watch, I tell people, look, I don't know any more about football than you do if you're just a general fan. And just because I'm a commissioner, that means I have some administrative roles to fill. But I've learned, because my predecessor, Bill Bibb, was an expert in basketball. He was a coach. He played for Adolph Rupp. And he knew everything about basketball. We'd go to games, and he'd tell me during a timeout, he goes, well, they're going to run this when they come out of there, and they're going to do this. And they did exactly that. And it was really cool. So I learned that's not my place, but I am a big fan, and I love guessing what's going to happen. But if I give anything, I wouldn't expect any credibility with that. But, I really think Rich Rodriguez is a really good football coach. So I would expect they're going to have some things that people have not prepared for, and some things that, you're going to have some surprises. It's week 0.
Mm-hmm. And looking at the other game with Austin Peay against Western Kentucky, this is a school and a program that is joining the ASUN, a full-fledged conference member now joining the ASUN football as well. How excited are you to see the Governors out there on the field?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. If you've ever been to a game or you've ever met Scotty Walden, I mean, if he can push his energy into the team, and he says, hey, football is a crash bang sport. We expect to be banging heads with folks and get in there and get it done. And I really do think that is contagious, especially in a game like football where it's an explosion sport. It's not a contact sport. You explode, and then you go back to the huddle. And, it's one of my pet peeves. I'd like to see student athletes or, whoever's playing football, after a big play, take a deep breath and walk back to the huddle or lightly jog and take another deep breath so you can explode on the next play. The guys that jump up and down and make, all sorts of, I was like, man, that's the energy you're going to want in the fourth quarter so you can explode again. Yeah. And so I really do think Austin Peay, they're growing their program. They got a taste of success a couple of years ago where they went to the playoffs. They won a game. And there's no better elixir than winning. And you give the fans a taste of that. Everybody loves it. So it's very intoxicating, and I'm excited. Every one of our programs has that winning pedigree, and they're going to compete like heck. So it should be a great season.
Well, I know I already asked you how excited are you for the last 2 questions, but I'm gonna go number 3 on it as well. How excited are you for this podcast to be released? ASUN Gameday.
Oh, man, it's number 1 on my list. I said I just couldn't believe I got invited. I'll have to congratulate my pub director and get Brian a little something extra for getting me on, because I know this is a coveted spot. And, ASUN Game Day podcast, it's going to be legendary. So
hey, only legends sit here, so you're a part of it, all of us.
There you go. Legend is born.
Well, we appreciate you joining the podcast. Thank you, Commissioner.
You got it. Anytime.
And we thank Commissioner Ted Gumbart for joining the first ASUN Game Day podcast Always a pleasure to be talking to him. Now we move on to our standout stat. Mike, what do you got for us this week?
Well, coming into a new season, kind of wanted to look at what we had last year and what we can kind of project this year and get excited about for the new season here coming up here shortly this afternoon. But one thing I found pretty interesting looking at last year's stats coming into this new season was 54%. And that is the touchdown percent in the red zone at a minimum that our ASUN teams had a year ago. With how strong our offenses are and some of our defensive performances, I think that's a stat to look at here in the first couple weeks to kind of see who gets their footing the most. Typically, offenses are ahead of defenses early in the season, but when your minimum team is at 54% scoring touchdowns, not just scoring, in the red zone, that's pretty impressive. You go all the way through the list at the very top. Central Arkansas was 82% scoring touchdowns at 36 out of 44 possessions in the red zone. So 54% being the minimum number of touchdowns from the whole season last year from all 6 of our teams is really impressive, and I'm interested to see how that fluctuates based on these matchups and these rivalries, and just kind of wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that and what you think heading into this new season.
I mean, I think that's exciting knowing that we had that kind of efficiency in the red zone from our team scoring touchdowns, and I'm not surprised that UCA led that. I mean, a team that scored 53 touchdowns, 379 points.
Yeah.
That's just what they did. So, and I'm expecting that again from them this year. The Bears, that offense is, I think, will still be high powered.
Now, I think it's a little spoiled of me to say that I'm not surprised by 54% because that is an astounding number for touchdowns. Scoring, it would be horrendous, but it's not. It's touchdowns, and that's absolutely incredible. But, I mean, again, you're really not surprised because you look at the offenses around the ASUN, like I just talked about, Austin Peay. They scored a sneaky 30-something points a game. JSU has a good offense. Kennesaw State has one of the most lethal running attacks in the nation. And then you look at UCA like you were just talking about. I mean, there's a lot of good quarterbacks, a lot of good offensive coordinators, and just the total package. And the ASUN really has it. That's astounding. I mean, I love to hear that. That's a conference that can put up some points, and the fans love it.
And the fact that it's our conference is even more exciting to me because obviously a lot of the fans love scoring, and the game has evolved over all levels so much for the offenses that tilt it one way. The defensive guys aren't very happy about that. But when you got scoring, you got fans, you got people excited, that's a great thing. And to be able to have that as one of our staples, to get people excited, especially with these 6 teams getting things launched for us here at the ASUN, I mean, you can't ask for very much more than good quarterback play and a lot of scores.
And that takes us into our ASUN Game of the Week. No surprise here. We already mentioned it. Jacksonville State versus Stephen F. Austin. I know we already somewhat went into depth about what that's going to take for Jacksonville State to get a win. And I want to reiterate, this is going to be a huge game for the entire ASUN when you're able to face a WAC opponent and one that had such success last year as SFA. They got to the FCS playoff, advanced to play Sam Houston State. They beat a incredible UIW team in round number 1. This is going to be a game that a lot of people are going to watch around the nation. It's week 0. A lot of eyes are going to be on this. And I know, William, you're looking for the atmosphere when we're going to be down there.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. As far as the game within the game, I'm also looking at what's outside of the game, so to speak, before the game. Like, what kind of energy are you coming off the bus with? What kind of energy are the fans bringing, the band bringing? This is week 0. It's time to go. Jacksonville State had arguably the biggest win of ASUN football last year, defeating Florida State. I need that same energy in week 0. Yep. I need it again.
So, Williams, game within the game. Mike, what's yours?
Well, and I think I kind of touched on it a little bit ago, but with the new regime coming in for Jacksonville State, I think the offense and defensive line, the trenches, is going to be so important. Obviously, there's going to be how are they going to react in the first part of the game with butterflies, but going beyond that, it's how are the offense and defensive lines going to try to control the line of scrimmage, because Stephen F. Austin, obviously a ranked team that's going to be a tough opponent, but if you can control pressuring the quarterback and protecting your own quarterback, that's off to a good start, and you never know what could happen if you're able to control those 2 aspects of the game.
It's not just the FCS kickoff. This is going to be one of the only games played that day. A lot of people are going to be watching it. It is on ESPN. Just ESPN, not Plus, not 2, the main hub of the mothership. ESPN in Montgomery, Alabama for the Crampton Bowl. there's going to be a lot of people watching. And for my game within the game, I hinted at it earlier, I want to look at the coaches. You look at two coaches who have, I don't want to say opposite resumes, but a little bit different in many ways. Coach Rich Rodriguez, his first year coming into Jacksonville State, he has coached the cream of the crop in the FBS level. He's coached Arizona, West Virginia, Michigan, you name it. He has done it. Colby Carthel for SFA in his fourth year for the Lumberjacks. This is a guy who has coached at some smaller schools, has worked his way up, but man, has he built a powerhouse at SFA. Once again, a lot of eyes on this game. I'm curious as to who's going to get the coaching advantage because I think this game is going to be that close, guys. It's going to come down to who used a timeout when they shouldn't. What team got a penalty when they should have been more disciplined. It's going to come down to just that much that's going to separate these two teams on Saturday.
And those are the interesting things in that first game of the season, the trends and what teams like to do. You may not get a feel for that in that first week. And even yourself coaching your own team, you're kind of figuring things out. So that's also an X factor of what are you going to try? What are you going to throw out there? And
typically in first games, and when it comes to college football, that's usually when you're at your worst, sloppy. And who's going to be less than? And that's really what you're looking for.
Well, and I think those are the games where obviously this is a marquee matchup, so you're trying to do whatever it takes to win, but you're also trying to hold some stuff back. You're not trying to show everything to all your opponents, especially coming into the ASUN. Everybody's watching you. You know they're watching you. So you're trying to be as efficient as possible, win the game the best you can without emptying that cabinet, so to speak, because you want to save some stuff for later on in the year. But if you're trying to win, though, you got to pull something out. You got to do it. Mm-hmm. So it just depends on how everything starts and how they're going to try to roll things out there and get things going. But it's going to be exciting for both ways. Both coaching staffs are experienced, but one hasn't been with the other very long. So we'll see how that goes.
Mm-hmm. And you were talking about not showing your hand, and Jacksonville State, they have a tough road schedule up until conference play. You don't really want to show your hand in all of these non-conference games because they're usually just building blocks toward your conference season. They go on the road to face Murray State, Tulsa, and Nichols, and they also are at home against Davidson September 3rd. Very excited to see what the ASUN football season is going to look like. We have SFA versus JSU in Montgomery, Alabama, and then we have Austin Peay versus Western Kentucky, 11 a.m. start in Kentucky. All right, that takes us into our ASUN preview. We've talked enough football. What's going on around the ASUN, William?
Well, it's the fall, so we're in full swing with all of our fall sports just about. Here today, or yesterday, was our first day of volleyball and men's soccer. We got all of our volleyball teams in action. That's exciting, getting this season going. Men's soccer is here. A lot of ranked teams coming up. I think a big game on Monday, Central Arkansas facing off against Washington, which was the runner-up for the national championship last year. So that's a big game for the Bears. They were the runner-up in the ASUN. So it's a tough challenge, but I think they can get things done. And obviously, here's second week of women's soccer. That season's going. And a lot of teams came out that first weekend and looked strong. So it's interesting to see if they can keep that momentum going here in the non-conference portion of the season.
Yeah, I'd like to highlight the other team. We talked about Austin Peay coming into the conference. They are a full conference member, not just an affiliate for football, but also the other team that came in a full conference member as well as Queens and women's soccer. Now, they did lose to UNC Wilmington on the first game that was in Charlotte, North Carolina, but then they had a tie with Ball State. And I know ties aren't necessarily wins, but to be able to do that coming up from D2 right away, that's a statement right there. And then they have two very winnable games going on the road in Columbus, Georgia against Mississippi College and then the University of West Florida. They also played number 11, University of Tennessee, at some point this year, September 11th. This is going to be a good year for Queens women's soccer. I'm very happy to see this program a part of the ASUN.
Well, it is exciting to see them doing so well and getting their win here soon, hopefully, for the ASUN. But with 14 teams coming in, the same thing goes for all of these sports that we're talking about with football. These other teams are watching these schools.
Yeah.
They're wanting to see how Austin Peay is doing in all these other sports. And you better believe they're also watching Queens and seeing that tie against Ball State. And, man, we better prepare a little harder for this because it might not be not necessarily easy, but it might be a little different than they think.
Oh, yeah.
Full 14-team conference. And now we move on to what everyone's really been waiting for in this podcast, the trivia. I'm going to give both these guys 4 multiple choice answers. I'm going to ask them a trivia question. They're going to tell me which one is the correct answer. We're just going to keep track, and then at the end of the fall season, I think we're going to make it a seasonal thing. Into the fall season, we'll hand out a belt.
A belt?
A belt.
We got an ASUN belt.
You know Gumbart's going to get on that. He's going to help us get a belt. We're all about luxury here at the ASUN, right?
Hey, I will take it. That's up for grabs.
It is up for grabs. Right now, the slate is clean. Now, I would like to get in on it and say if you guys both get it wrong, I'd get a point, but I think that's a little too easy, so I'll just leave it to you guys.
Do you know the answer?
Don't you know? Yeah, I was gonna say, don't you know that would be unfair.
Right, I know the answer, but I'm saying if I throw you guys off the scent and neither one of you get it right, I would get a point, but I don't think I'm going to do that.
Okay.
Because there's 4.
Yeah.
If I made it 3, all right, if I made it 3, then I get in on it. How about that? I'm already changing the format. First episode. Look at me. I'm calling the shot.
Hey, you are. You got it.
But since you came up with the questions, if one of us gets it right or both of us get it right, do you lose a point?
No, I just wouldn't get one.
So you gain points but can't lose any points.
Well, you guys can't lose points either. You get 1 or 0. That's the format.
But you already know the answer, so that's a little unfair.
All right, I'm doing it. I'm changing it to 3, and I'm gonna throw my hat into the ring here. I want a belt.
You want a belt?
I want a belt.
Now you got jealous of William and
All
I's
right,
prize, and you want in.
So I have 4 answers here. I'm gonna cut it down to 3, but I'll read it out before I cut it down. For the first trivia question on the ASUN Gameday podcast, which country won the first ever World Cup? Starting off with sports questions. Not always going to be sports, but this one it is. So A is Uruguay, B is Germany, C is Italy, D is Argentina. And I will take away Italy. So A, Uruguay, B, Germany, C, Argentina. Who won the first ever World Cup?
I'm going to go with C.
C, Argentina.
Yeah.
No reasoning behind it. It's kind of hard to come up with reasons because we're kind of just guessing.
Yeah.
Or you guys are. I'm just the guy who looks it up.
To me, I think Argentina is a good answer, so I think it's going to be something other than that. So I'm actually going to pick A, Uruguay.
Okay, answers are locked.
Final answer.
Final answer. Mike gets a point. It is Uruguay. Well done.
Good job.
I would like a little more excitement than that.
I'd like to say that was just a wonderful guess on my part, and thank you very much for the 1 point. Just one
Don't
step,
thank me. I mean, it's just a game. I'm not.
one step closer to that belt, baby. I'm excited. Let's go.
You are, and this is a weekly podcast, so these points matter.
They do.
They matter.
They do.
Just like the college football regular season, every question matters.
And I was really, he really had me on the hook there. He said, "Yeah, Argentina seems like a good guess," and I was looking pretty. That I was going to get a point to start it off.
Yeah, yeah.
And now, oh, how the turntables. It's an Office reference. Trust me, I'm not completely out of it right now. That is a great note to end on. I appreciate you guys being here for the first ASUN Game Day podcast. Looking forward to Jacksonville State and Austin Peay being in action today. Make sure to tune in 11 a.m. kickoff at Western Kentucky and 2:30 kickoff for the Crampton Bowl for Jacksonville State. That is it for George Griffitt, William Hall, Mike DeVader.
Football is back.